So, in Worlds, we saw that Umumu was the most played level 3 unit, and congratulations Dishsoap for winning Worlds, NA number 1. Now, you are looking around how to play this comp, but don't worry my friends, because I, Xteria, got you on how to play Lux Reroll. In this video, we will cover the strongest items, strongest units, and strongest augments. Going on to the items, the best DPS units would be Janna and Lux. They both basically use the same item, and their best end slot item would be having a Spear Sojourn. This item allows them to keep casting abilities over and over, because you gain more mana for every auto attack. And speaking of auto attack, Gnasher's Tooth is a very good one because when you activate your ability, it gives you more attack speed, and therefore you can keep casting more and more your abilities. For Janna's case, you get more shields and somewhat damage, and at Lux, you get more stuns and some damage on the board. And then since they're both AP, having a static shiv on one of them is very good because you shred some magic resist, so therefore your magic damage will do more damage on the board. And the best alternative item is if you cannot get a mana item such as Spear Sojourn, Adaptive Helm is pretty okay with that. And then if you need a different attack speed item, having a Rage Blade is not too bad. If you need damage item, having an Archangel Staff is very good if you don't need Static Shiv on one of them. Or you can get like Death Cap or even like Jewel Gauntlet's okay. But Archangel Staff is the best one to take. And their best Orin artifact you can take is specifically for Lux. Horizon Focus is actually very powerful on her because this item, what it does is if you stun them, you do extra damage. And therefore, Lux is the perfect unit for this because she stuns 2 people. So therefore, that 2 people that get stunned, they take extra damage. And then for Sniper's Focus is very good on both of them because it treats like an attack speed item. And then on top of that, the further the target, the more damage you do. And their abilities hit pretty far. So this item is actually very powerful for them. And then Mana Zane is very good on them because it makes them cast infinite. For your best tank unit, it will be a Mumu. And his best in slot item is to have a Redemption. The reason why this item is very powerful on him because it gives him some healing. And the Mumu really needs a lot of healing because he's actually a super tanky unit. So having a little bit of armor magic resist is okay on him, but having healing is something that you can't replace. And on top of that, he does heal a lot too, like himself with his ability. He can heal other people around him and himself, and then the longer he's in the fight, the more he just keeps healing. So therefore, Redemption is very powerful on him. And then Declaw is also very good right now because this item gives him some health and a lot of health regen. And then any unit that is AP, he just negates that damage. And Crown Guard would be probably like the best armor you could put on him since his ability is AP. This item gives him a shield and it gives him more healing for his ability since that AP will convert into his like healing and damage. And you get some armor. The best alternative items you can put on Mumu is instead of a Crown Guard, you could have a Gargoyle Stoneplate. This item is actually very powerful on him because he'll be the last unit standing most of the time. So this item makes isolation units even more tankier. And then Adaptive Helm is pretty decent on Mumu overall because it gives him more mana for every time he gets hit. So he can keep casting his ability and keep healing more. And the Steadfast Heart is one of his highest win rate items because if you need armor, this item is it. And it also negates some percent damage that he gets hit by. So this item is actually pretty strong on him since he heals. And the best Orin artifact item you could put on Mumu is having an Eternal Winter. This item is actually really strong on him because he usually lasts a long time on the board, and the longer he lasts, the more he will stun everyone that hits him. Animate Visage is actually pretty decent on him as well because it gives him a lot of health regen and a lot of magic resist. And then Diamond Hands makes him last a lot longer in fights because it gives him more AP, so it makes his ability give more healing. And on top of that, once you hit a certain amount of HP, you're invulnerable for about like 1.5 seconds, and you get 1 gold on top of that. So this item overall is actually very powerful on the Mumu. The best support item you could take for this board would be having a Moonstone Renewer. This item allows your board to stall a lot longer, and it makes a Mumu survive for a longer period of time. And then Radiant Virtue is a good substitute for Redemption on a Mumu since it does the same thing, but it's just basically Redemption on steroids. And then Big Gem is really decent overall on this board since the board usually lasts longer than like 15 seconds for a fight. Since everything on your board's AP, having a Chalice is very good for that, so it makes your units in the backline do extra damage. Since most of the time, you cannot afford to maybe put a Morellicon on Morgana, having a Bambi Cinder is pretty decent because this item gives you anti-heal, and most of the time you're going to need anti-heal for every board. And then for utility items, you could put a Morellicon on Morgana or even like a red buff, like some sort of anti-heal item if you don't have Bambi Cinder already. And then if you don't have Static Shiv for whatever reason, but you should, you could put Onyx Spark on another tank like Alawi, or you can even throw in a Mumu if you have to. Either way, as long as you have a magic resist shred item, it's good for that. And then the best emblems you could take is having a Porcelain on your second carry, such as like Janna or even Teemo, which we'll explain later in the video. And then if you get a Sage emblem, you can just throw it on anyone, like any unit that's like not the carry unit. So basically, for example, like your other tank units because it gives you health, so it's pretty useful on them. The best units you could throw out for early game at level 4 would be to have a Teemo carry at the moment because this unit is actually really strong since he does like a lot of damage and he could hit multiple units if you had Trick Shot in, which is Sivir. And then since Sivir is really good with Garen, you could throw him into as the Amumu item holder. And then since he's a Warden, you could throw it in Jax, or if not, you could throw in Riven for the early Story Weaver, throw in KO, and then make her blue so you can get more AP for Teemo and Sivir. And then for the items that you want to slam, which is like the BIS slam, Spear Sojourn is the best one to start with, or even Static. If you have to, Nashor's is okay. I wouldn't really recommend, but If it's an item they have to slam, it's okay. And Redemption is a very good tank item, or for example, even Gargoyle Stoneplate. And for Win Streak Slam, which is not technically BIS, but is actually really good to do, would be having a Crown Guard. Even though it's BIS on a Mumu, Gargoyle Stoneplate would be kind of better, but it's still a really good item to have on a Mumu, having a Crown Guard. And then Onyx Spark is a very good slam too, because it's basically like a static shiv, but for your tank. And then Steadfast Heart is a very strong tank item for early game, since you'll be taking a lot of less damage. And then Sunfire is a very good like early game start, since it'll give you a lot of damage on the board. And on top of that, it's just a very good tank item overall for early game at least. Late game is not too useful, but it's just for win streaking. So if you don't need to build this, don't do it. And then Adaptive Helm is a very good situational item overall. You can use it for both backline, like for example, instead of your Spirit Soldier, you could do Adaptive Helm, or you can use it as a tank item if you have to. And then if you want to win streak with a random damage item, Guard Breaker is pretty decent for that, because this item gives you a lot of damage for early game. And then the units you play level 5 is throwing in a +1 Story Weaver unit, such as like Zyra or Riven. Zyra would be more preferable because she's an AP unit, and since you're going to be playing blue KO, she actually benefits with that really well. Or if you already have Story Weaver in, then you can just throw in a +1 unit like Jax, or like some sort of tank unit that can play well with Garen, so you can like last longer in fights. And about the time you hit level 6, if you have too many Teemos, like for example if you have like 5 of them for whatever reason, then you can just play Teemo carry instead, which is having 2 trick shot with Teemo and Sivir, and you throw in Lux because Lux is a very powerful unit, and Amumu is also a very powerful unit, and they both synergize really well together. And you want a 3-star is Teemo with a Lux and a Mumu. And if you can Alawi, if you can't 3-star Lux, it's fine as long as you 3-star Teemo first, but you kind of have to have a 3-star Mumu because he's your main tank. And then Alawi also synergizes with Lux pretty well because she's Arcanist with Alawi. And then you want to play for mostly Warden after that, so when you hit level 7, you throw in +1 Warden, which is a Nautilus. And this kind of positioning is actually pretty good because this allows Amumu to last longer in fights with the Gargoyle Stoneplate. If you have Gargoyle Stoneplate, it's a pretty good positioning. And then it allows the other units to also like last longer since Amumu is always healing. And then the best item you can put on Teemo is having a Spirit Soldier is a must-have with a Relicon. And then +1 AP items such as Death Cap, Archangel Staff, or even Jewel Gauntlet. And then you put +1 mana item on Lux like Spirit Soldier or Adaptive Helm. And about to hit level 8, you throw in Morgana for that +1 Ghostly. And then when you hit level 9, since Morgana is also a Sage, you throw in a Wukong with the Sage synergy activated, and then you can trade out that Garen for a set. With that out of the way, now let's talk about the real board. So when you have this level 5 board, you transition to this board at level 6, which is the Lux carry board. And then you can transition the Teemo items to the Lux, and then most of the time you would want Spirit Soldier and Static, or even like Nashor's Tooth is fine. And then your main tank item is like Redemption or Gargoyle Stoneplate, whatever, in Amumu. And then you play these two because they're both Porcelain. And then Amumu is a Warden, so you throw in Alawi, and Alawi is also Arcanist with Luck. And then since you can reroll for another like 2 cost units, Zyra and Janna would be really good for that. So you can 3-star all of these. And you would want to force the 3-star on the Mumu as well. The main ones you want to do is like Lux and the Mumu. But if you 3-star Janna and Zyra as well, that's pretty good. Or even Alawi or even Diana. And then Diana synergizes with, you know, Janna because of Dragon Lords. So that works for that. And she's also a Sage. With Zyra is also a Sage. So you have a lot of synergies going on this board. And playing Lux in the middle is pretty good because she hits more units that way. And then when you hit level 7, you want to throw in a Sage. You want to put Morgana in the corner. And then Janna next to Zyra. Not really necessarily in the corner, but like next to her. So she can survive a lot longer that way. And you also get Ghostly with Morgana with the Sage as well. And then when you hit level 8, you just throw in Annie just to get that Invoker with Janna. And then when you hit level 9, you just throw in Wukong for the extra Sage. So you have 4 Sage on the board after that. And then the best augments you could take is having Boiling Point because you can be playing Porcelain. This augment is very powerful for that because it makes them have anti-heal and extra damage. And then Jewel Lotus is very powerful for like casters in general. So like for example like Lux, Teemo, and even Janna, Zyra, their abilities are going to hit even harder because it makes them crits. And then combat casters, since they're casting a lot, it gives them more shield for every time they cast. Since everything's AP, Magic Wand's good for that. And then the more items you have, the more powerful you get, so big grab bag's good for that. And then you need static shield no matter what, so shock treatment's really good for that. And then Sage Crest is pretty decent because you get more Sage on the board, you get more damage on the board. And then Hero Grab Bag to 3-star things easier, and same thing with Prismatic Ticket to also 3-star things easier. And that is it for my Lux Reroll comp guide. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section down below. And this is going to be my last video for set 11. Since we're about to hit set 12, we're going to be making more content of that. So until then, I'll see you guys there. Later.